You've tuned in to another edition of The Break Room, a weekly conversation about how the City of St. Augustine works from those who do the work every day. Hosted by the City of St. Augustine's Communications Director, Melissa Wissel, The Break Room offers a closer look at the different city departments and provides updates on current and upcoming projects and events. And now your host, Melissa Wissel.
Welcome to The Break Room. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Melissa Wissel, Communications Director for the City of St. Augustine. This week, we're talking about hurricane preparedness, but with a focus on flood mitigation and how best to prepare for what happens after the storm if your house floods. We have several low-lying areas in the city limits and elsewhere in the county, and you know who you are if you live in those areas. But let me ask you this. Do you have flood insurance? Did you have flood insurance during Matthew, Irma, and Dorian? Because having flood insurance will make all the difference in recovering from flood damage. So with me in studio to talk about the importance of flood insurance and just how much it makes a difference, I've invited Richard Buddy Scholland, the City of St. Augustine's building official, to join me in the break room. Buddy, welcome.
Thank you.
We've not had the opportunity to meet on the break room, so I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks.
So let's start just real quick with what it means to be the building official. You have a lot of hats, you do a lot of things. Yep. All things inspection related, I presume.
Yeah, anytime you want to build something, you got to get a permit for it. And so it comes through me, basically. I'll do the plan reviews for all of the construction that's going on. I'll also do some of the inspections. We do have an inspector, but he does most of the stuff. I also am the floodplain administrator. So I work with, make sure that people are in compliance with FEMA requirements and the building codes requirements for flood zones. I'm also the building code administrator, I'm sorry, not the building code administrator. I'm the code enforcement manager.
That's it.
So they've worked underneath me also. Mm-hmm. I think that's all the hats I have right now.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So let's backtrack to that one key role that you mentioned, which was the floodplain administrator. We're in hurricane season, and we love to talk about floodplains, flood zones, flooding. Let's talk about what that means to be the floodplain administrator.
Well, part of my job as a floodplain administrator is try to give everybody discounts through the community rating system.
Okay.
Everybody currently gets a 25% discount on their flood insurance. And then when there's a hurricane and we have flooding, then I have to go out and we have teams that will go out and they will do initial assessments, damage assessments on properties, on the structures that are around there. Then once I'm done with that portion, then I move into looking to see if what structures have been substantially damaged. And then identifying those and notifying the owners that they're substantially damaged and let them know what they're required to do from that. And
you've seen, would it be safe to say you've seen every flooded property in St. Augustine or just about?
Just about, yes.
And so this probably first really became something that you really were learning about after Matthew. You hadn't had much exposure to being a floodplain manager prior to that in the sense of having flooding.
No, and that was actually within the first year that I worked for the city, and I came from Brunswick, so we didn't have a lot of flooding up there either. Right. So Matthew was an eye opener as to what happens with flooding and the stuff that we have to do afterwards.
And for everyone.
Yeah.
And when you talk about what it meant to have this flooding experience, what does happen? I should have flood insurance. Some people don't have flood insurance. Why would I not have flood insurance, whether I'm in a flood zone or not? Can you help us understand that?
Well, I talked to some people after Matthew, and they had told me that they didn't have flood insurance. And I asked them, how come you don't have it? Because you're in a flood zone. And they said, well, I paid off the mortgage. It hasn't flooded the 30 years I had the mortgage. It hadn't flooded since the 60s. So I figured I didn't need it. Then they got flooded during Matthew.
Right. And hopefully those folks then went and got flood insurance?
Hopefully they did, yeah. I'm pretty sure after Irma happened 11 months later that they definitely got flood insurance.
And so let's talk about that too. It does matter whether you had had flood insurance. And even if you think you don't need it because it hasn't flooded, which we've all seen to the contrary, flood insurance really makes a difference in your ability to recover your house, to mitigate for the future.
Yeah, everybody needs, especially in the state of Florida, everybody needs to have flood insurance. And if you look at the state of Texas for Hurricane Harvey, all those houses got flooded because that hurricane just sat over the top of them. Most of those were not in a flood zone. Those people didn't have flood insurance. If they would have had the flood insurance, even not being in a flood zone, they would have been able to pay, or the flood insurance would have paid to have that, to fix their houses up.
And when we talk about flood mitigation, Kelly Wilson has been on the break room talking about mitigation and she's a big, big advocate for the flood insurance. What does it mean when someone says to mitigate? Is that something I'm doing to look towards the future? It's something I'm looking toward to fix for the present?
Mitigating is for the future, and it's doing something that will lessen the impact of flooding. So a lot of the ones that happen is you see a lot of people that are elevating their houses. That's mitigating it, getting it up above the base flood elevation so that if there is a flood, you have a better chance of not having damage to your house or to the structure because of that. Others will demolish the house and rebuild. And when they rebuild, they have to build to the current building codes, which says that you have to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation.
And it's not cheap to elevate.
No, it's not.
But before we talk about that, I am going to take a quick minute to remind folks, if you are listening now, you are listening to The Break Room. I'm Melissa Wissel, Communications Director for the City of St. Augustine. And today in studio, I'm talking with Buddy Shawland, the city's building official. We're talking about mitigating and the cost of mitigating. I know we had a neighborhood meeting last fall in South Davis Shores. Folks were very frustrated with some of that flooding that occurred that wasn't a named storm or a hurricane. It was a flash flood, a nor'easter. Those types of events also count, if you will, towards those instances of flooding?
Yes, they do. Anytime that water gets into your structure, it's flooded, your flood insurance will cover it if you have the flood insurance. It'll allow you to get it fixed. Your homeowner's insurance will not allow that. So the FEMA doesn't care what type of flooding it is. Your water heater can bust. It'll help out. So they just want to get you to get back in your house.
And so FEMA, let's talk FEMA, because you and I are on a task force committee, if you will. We are working at listening to what the community has said, the frustration of how do they get that money? How do they recover that FEMA funding? Because there are FEMA funding sources out there. It's a lot of red tape, but you've learned a lot about it. Can you share with our listeners what is happening with that and what you do with helping recover that FEMA money?
Yeah, FEMA gives an annual grant out. It's the Flood Mitigation Assistant Grant Program, and they give so much money. And it's a competitive grant program that's throughout the country. So everybody in the country, that whether they're a state, the local communities, federally recognized tribes and territories, can all apply for this. This past year, 2020, it was allocated for $200 million of available funding that FEMA can give for all of this. Of those, I just looked it up this morning, of all the states, there was over 477 million total applied for.
Wow. From
the different states. Now, that's all the money altogether. FEMA doesn't foot the bill for everything. So FEMA's part of that they're looking to get is just under $400 million of the federal cost. It's twice as much as what's been allocated for it. So not everybody's going to be able to get whatever they want done. And so then it becomes a cost share and a match with that, and that becomes their priority. What do they want? What's their priority for funding these grants? And what they look at is repetitive loss or severe repetitive loss properties when it comes to homes.
And this is something that our residents are going to be eligible. They can apply for this.
Yes, they can apply for it.
So let's go ahead, finish what you were saying. This does apply to our folks listening.
So for 2020, the city did apply for 2 grants for it. One was turned down by the state because it wasn't cost effective. The other one has since gone on to FEMA, and it's under review for FEMA. And the one that went forward is for severe repetitive loss property. And people don't know whether they're severe repetitive loss or if they're repetitive loss. Okay. Severe repetitive loss is considered a property that has 4 or more separate claim payments that have been made under the flood insurance coverage, with the amount of each such claim exceeding $5,000, and with the cumulative of all of those exceeding $20,000.
Okay,
that's one way to be a severe repetitive loss. Mm-hmm. The other way is to have 2 separate claim payments that have been made under the coverage, with the cumulative amount of such claims exceeding the market value of the insured structure.
Oh, wow.
So if you put in 2 claims and your house is worth $100,000 and your claims come out to $120,000, you're a severe repetitive loss.
Okay.
So you qualify for this grant. And then there's the repetitive loss. The repetitive loss is if you've had at least 2 claims of which the cost of the repair is average or equal to exceed 25% of the market value of the structure at the time of each flood event. So you could have two 2 claims.
Gotcha.
Now, these claims have to be through the NFIP. If you have private insurance, it doesn't count.
Okay.
And FEMA only wants to give the money to people that have flood insurance through the NFIP because they're investing in you.
Gotcha.
In that, so they've got to get something out of it.
And this is really it's money that's out there. We haven't necessarily been able to do a whole lot to help. We are working on getting in a consultant to help you and to help city staff so that our residents can do that. But the message today, I think what we really want to remind people is you got to have the flood insurance in order to qualify.
Right. You have to have the flood insurance prior to the grant coming out.
Okay.
So the grant comes out generally the end of September, beginning of October. You have to have flood insurance before that. I can go to get flood insurance on September 15th. I'm not going to count because it takes 30 days for that flood insurance to become active. So if you're thinking about that, you want to try to go for this grant, and even people that aren't a severe repetitive loss or repetitive loss can still get in there.
Okay.
But if you're thinking about trying to do this and get this money to be able to mitigate your property, you need to look at getting flood insurance by the end of July so that it'd be in effect by the time this grant comes out.
And it takes, like you just said, it takes 30 days for the insurance to come into effect.
Correct.
So just like we tell people during hurricane preparedness on all the other messages is don't wait until a named storm. You can't get insurance when a named storm is already heading your way.
Correct.
But the insurance is and you mentioned it, flood insurance is different than homeowners insurance.
Yes, it is.
It is separate.
Yes.
And so that flood insurance is for this water damage. So if I'm one of these homes, and I think I am, most likely our listeners know if they would qualify, do you think? Or
most likely they would. If there's severe repetitive loss, from my understanding, they can't go to a regular insurance agent to get the flood insurance. Their insurance policy is kicked back up to FEMA, and FEMA regulates it. So they'll be in contact straight with FEMA when it comes to their flood insurance. If they're a repetitive loss, they'll know because their rates are being increased every year.
Right. And if I'm in a flood zone and I have flooded and I want to try to elevate or raise, that's part of what this reimbursement program helps me reimburse with, correct? If I'm one of those homes with the loss and the damage?
Yeah, they won't reimburse you.
Okay.
But you can mitigate.
Okay.
They don't. You can't start on the project. You can't do anything. It's something you can't do before and get money for it later on. You have to wait until you get awarded it.
But you do have to outlay the money up front, or they give you the money?
Well, what it is you apply for the grant, and there's some money that you would have to put up front because we need an elevation certificate. We're going to need possibly a contractor's quote on it.
Okay.
So you have to put some money up front. That money that you do for that is reimbursable.
Okay.
Because it's going towards this grant. But you can't start on anything of this project until the grant is awarded. And then they'll pay for it. And what they do is they give the money will come down to either the state or to the city, and we manage the money. And then as we hit milestones, we pay the contractor. So the homeowner doesn't get the money, but the money is already allocated and it comes down from FEMA. So it's there so that you can start working on the project.
Okay. So if I'm waiting for this new grant period to open up in the fall, what can I be doing now to be ready if I want to come in and apply for this grant? Do I call you? You can get my paperwork together?
You can call me, you can email me, and I can give you some information. But some of the things you need to do is you need to get that elevation certificate. There's a lot of surveyors around in the county and in this part of the state, but they're busy. There's a lot of houses going up too. So generally there could be up to 2 months out to get that elevation certificate.
Okay.
So you're going to want to schedule that elevation certificate if you don't have one currently. You're going to want to start talking to people about, talk to an architect or an engineer to see what you want to do. And you want to talk to contractors because you're going to need those people to give you their estimates and that kind of stuff so that you can submit it to the city.
I need to know how much money I'm asking for.
Right.
Right.
And we have to put that all in. There's other perks to it that we can put in there, but that's something we figure out later. A lot of the stuff we as a city or whoever or consultants that we get, we'll pull a lot of the information, the paperwork that's got to go in there, but there's some things that the homeowner is going to have to do.
And we could look forward to some information coming out in the next couple of months about some public meetings, information, outreach.
That's the plan, is to have public meetings in the different areas so that we can get the information out to the people and get people interested in doing this so we can start mitigating and they can quit flooding.
That's the key.
Yes.
Right. I don't want to flood anymore. If I live there and I love my home, there are ways to save my home for the future to mitigate.
Yes, there is.
Although I will say this, I have to keep the same footprint, right? I can't build my dream house.
You can, if you're demolishing and reconstructing,
Okay.
you can go over, I think it's 10% bigger footprint.
Okay.
So you can go a little bit bigger. If you're elevating, you just can elevate your structure. Now, with that said, that's the paperwork that you put in. If while you're doing the contract, if you decide to change some things, that's on you. It's coming out of your pocket.
Well, it sounds like a great opportunity. Sounds like a great program. And we'll make sure to keep our listeners informed.
Okay.
And thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure.
It's great having you.
Thank you.
As we wrap up another edition of The Break Room, I hope we answered your questions. If we didn't, take a minute and send an email to info@citysnog.com. We want to keep you informed about what's happening in and around the city and that you hear it here from the people doing the work and making it happen every day. Remember that in order to stay connected, you need to be connected, especially during hurricane season. Like us and follow us on any of our social media platforms. You'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @City St. Aug. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
You've been listening to The Break Room, a weekly program addressing projects and programs offered by the City of St. Augustine. Join us each week as the city's communications director, Melissa Whistle, has in-depth conversations with the people who make our town work to meet the needs of our community. The Break Room is produced by communications specialist for the City of St. Augustine, Cindy Walker, and engineer by Flagler College communication major, Anne Marie Gresham. See you at this time next week for another edition of The Break Room.